right, chapter 197, The Old Hag and the Resurrection Man. The old hag, who has so frequently figured in former portions of our narrative, had latterly become more prosperous, if not more respectable, than when we first introduced her to our readers. From having been the occupant of only one room in the house and the court leading from Golden Lane, she had become the lessee of the entire dwelling. The commencement of this success was owing to her connection with Lady Cecilia Harborough in the intrigue of the living statue, and from that moment affairs seemed to have taken a new turn with her. At all events, her business increased, and the sphere of her infamy became enlarged. She would have taken another and better house in some fashionable quarter, and recommenced the avocation of a first-rate brothel-keeper, the pursuit of the middle period of her life, but she reasoned that she was known to a select few where she was, that the obscurity of her dwelling was favorable to many of the nefarious projects in which her aid was required, and that she was too old to dream of forming a new connection elsewhere. It would be impossible to conceive a soul more diabolically hardened, more inveterately depraved than that of this old hag. In order to increase her resources and occupy, as she said, her leisure time, she had hired or bought some half-dozen young girls about 10 or 12 years old, hired or bought them, whichever the reader pleases, of their parents, a consideration having been given for each, and the said parents comforting themselves with the idea that their children were well provided for. It was 9 o'clock in the evening, and the old hag was seated in the same room where we have before frequently seen her. She was, however, surrounded by several additional comforts. She no longer burnt turf in her grate, but good Wall's-End coals. She no longer placed her feet on an old mat, but on a thick carpet. She no longer bought her gin by the quartern, or half-pint, but by the bottle. She sweetened her tea with lump sugar instead of moist, and in the place of a stew or tripe or cow heel, she had a joint cooked in the bakehouse or a chicken boiled on her own fire. Her select patrons had contributed much towards this improvement in her circumstances, but the luxuries in which she could now indulge were provided for her by the prostitution of her young victims. She was now dozing in her armchair with her great cat upon her lap, but even in the midst of her semi-slumber her ears were awake to the least motion of the knocker of the house door, that sound which was the indication of business. Thus, when true to the time appointed in his note, the resurrection man arrived at the house. Not many moments elapsed ere he was admitted into the hag's parlor. "So you have discovered the address of Catherine Wilmot?" said the hag. "Where does she reside?" "No matter where," returned the resurrection man. "It is sufficient that I can communicate with her, or bring her up to London when it suits me. I have come now to have a full understanding with you on the subject. If we play our cards well, we may obtain a round sum of money from this girl. That is, supposing she is really the child of the Harriet Wilmot whom you knew." "There can be no doubt of it. There can be no doubt," exclaimed the old hag, rocking herself to and fro. "She is the daughter of that Harriet Wilmot whom I knew, and whose image sometimes haunts me in my dreams." "But what proofs have you of the fact?" demanded the resurrection man. "It will not suit me to take any more trouble in the matter unless I am for certain that I am not running a wild goose chase. I shall not tell you how I came to know Harriet Wilmot 17 years ago, nor anything more about her than I can help," said the old hag resolutely. "I was, however, well acquainted with her. I knew all about her. With her own lips she told me her story. She was for some time engaged to be married to a young man, young at that period, in Southampton. His name was Smithers. Circumstances separated them before the realization of their hopes and wishes, and she came to London with her father, who soon after died of a broken heart through misfortunes in business." "Broken heart!" exclaimed the resurrection man contemptuously. "Whoever died of a broken heart? But never mind, go on." "Harriet was alone in the world, an orphan, unprotected, and without friends or resources," continued the hag. "She was accordingly compelled to go out to service. A wealthy gentleman saw her and fell in love with her. But I shall not tell you all about that. No, I shall not tell you about that. Harriet's was a strange fate, a sad fate, and I do not like to think of the part I acted in some respects towards her," added the old woman, shaking her head as if it were in regret of the past. "Go on," said the resurrection man. "If you have got anything unpleasant in your memory, all the shakings of the head in the world won't drive it out." "Alack, you speak the truth," muttered the old woman. "It was the blackest deed I ever committed. I wish it had never occurred. It troubles me very often, and when I cannot sleep at night I am constantly thinking of Harriet Wilmot." "What is all this to lead to?" demanded Tidkins impatiently. "I shall not trouble you with many more of my reflections," said the hag. "Harriet became a mother. She had a daughter, on whom she bestowed the name of Catherine. 3 or 4 years afterwards I lost sight of her, and never beheld her more. From that time, all traces of herself and her child were gone until last year, when the murder of Reginald Tracy's housekeeper placed the name of Catherine Wilmot before the public. That name immediately struck me. The newspaper said she was 16 years old, precisely the age that Harriet's daughter must have been. Then the name of Smithers was mixed up in the proceedings which ensued. I saw it all. Harriet must be dead, and Smithers had adopted her as his niece. But to convince myself still further, I went to the Old Bailey. I saw Catherine in the dock. You might have knocked me down with a feather, so strong was the resemblance between the young girl and her deceased mother. I came home. I was very ill. Methought I had seen the ghost of one whom I had deeply, deeply injured. And now you have so far forgotten your remorse that you are desirous to turn your knowledge of Catherine's parentage to a good account, said the Resurrection Man with a sneering laugh. But how do you know that she is not well informed on that head already? She cannot, answered the old hag. She would not bear the name of Wilmot if she was. Besides, I have since ascertained that her mother died when she was only 4 years old, and therefore Catherine was too young to receive any revelation from her parents' lips. No, I have good reason to believe that Catherine knows nothing of her parental origins. I am now perfectly satisfied, from all you have told me, that Catherine Wilmot is the daughter of Harriet, whom you knew, said the Resurrection Man, and as you seem so positive that she is unaware of many important particulars concerning her birth, I will proceed in the business you have proposed to me. Where is she living? Inquired the old woman. If I tell you that, said Tidkins, what guarantee have I got that you will not post off a loan to her, extort the purchase money for your secrets, and chouse me out of my regulars? Look you, I have been at the trouble and expense of finding her out, which you never could have done, and I must go halves with you in the produce of the affair. So you shall, so you may, returned the old woman, but I will not speak to her in your hearing. I do not know how it is that I have a strange superstitious awe in connection with all that concerns Harriet Wilmot's memory and the existence of her child. I cannot help the feeling. I cannot help it. You are either a driveling fool or you are deceiving me, exclaimed the Resurrection Man, darting a furious glance upon the hag. You entertain compunction about these Wilmots, and yet you purpose to obtain money from the girl. Now is this consistent? Take care how you play with me, for if I catch you out in any of your tricks, I will hang you up to your own bedpost as readily as I would wring the neck of that old cat. You shall see whether I will deceive you. You shall see, cried the old hag with some degree of alarm. Arrange the business as you will, so long as I may have speech of Catherine without being overheard, but you shall be present when she pays me for the secret which I have to communicate. Let that be the understanding, and I am agreeable, observed the Resurrection Man. Will it suit you to go a few miles out of town with me tomorrow? Is it to see Catherine? Inquired the hag. What the devil else do you think I want your company for? Cried Tidkins. To take you to dine at Greenwich or Blackwall? No, not quite such a fool as that. However, tomorrow morning you may expect me at 7 o'clock. It is not light at that hour, observed the hag. I prefer the dusk of either morning or evening, answered the Resurrection Man. It suits me better, because I have a few enemies in London. But as I was saying, I shall call for you at 7 tomorrow morning. A friend of mine, one Banks of Globetown, has a covered spring cart and a capital bit of horseflesh. He will drive us to where we have to go in no time. So don't keep us waiting, as the vehicle will be at the bottom of the lane by 7:15. The old hag promised to be punctual, and the Resurrection Man took his departure from her den. Okay, so that's why the Resurrection Man has been looking for Catherine, because the old hag wants something to do with her. Interesting. We know the old hag is doing better money-wise, and in part because she has been essentially selling young girls into prostitution, which is fitting for her, but a horrible, horrible thing. And she knows something about the parentage of Catherine Wilmot and intends to make money off of that secret, but also has a superstitious feeling that it's all going to come to something of importance, which means it probably will. So, all right, we'll see what happens.